about giving due respect and honor to where the country is currently in terms of all that has taken place this week with the young people that have lost their lives in East London. So I'd like to ask us with respect to really take a few moments of prayer. And by prayer, I mean give expression what prayer means to you. Some of you, it might be silence. Some of you might be expression of words. Some of you might be closing your eyes. For me, it will definitely be speaking words. But I want to invite you right now to turn your attention on the young people who've lost their lives in the wake of Youth Month. Think of their families, what they are going through. And we're just going to kickstart this webinar with that kind of consciousness where South Africa is at the moment. Let us begin. Father, we just take the time now to pray for the youth who've lost their lives, in particular the loved ones, the family who are left behind with the wake of all that has happened. Father, we lift up these family members. We pray for your comfort, your love, your peace. Where there is confusion and dismay, we pray for calm. We pray for your divine provision as families try to bring together finances for services and all that needs to take place to allow these kids to rest. Father, we pray for your divine provision. I pray that they receive love, kindness, and warmth in this time. We pray even for our ministry as they handle the situation. Let your justice prevail. Let your truth be revealed. And Father, we pray that there is reconciliation. There are answers received through this tragedy. We pray specifically for our young people. We pray for the young people of South Africa. We thank you, Father, that they are arising, that they are well, that even through all that has happened in this week, we declare that it is well in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much for indulging me with that. So now, without further ado, I'd like to just provide us with the context as to why we are here today. And to do that, I just want to really just set the tone, with respect to not only our continent, which is well endowed with natural resources ranging from arable land, water, oil, natural gas. South Africa is in itself indeed blessed. We have the largest reserves of platinum group metals. In addition, the country contains 17% of the world's antimony reserves. We are surrounded by two oceans, occupies only about 2% of the world's land area. We are home to nearly 10% of the world's plants, 7% of the reptiles, birds, and mammals, and 15% of known coastal marine species. We are indeed a blessed country. But despite these blessings, with such a wide variety of natural resources, South Africa is grappling with a range of environmental issues, such as climate induced disasters, land degradation, depletion, and deficit of fresh water resources. The list goes on and on. And so, coming together, UNICEF, together with UNIDO, OHCRS, OHCHR, is organizing this youth environmental webinar because it recognizes that young people in South Africa are disproportionately affected by all these natural and resources that are depleting. And so these environmental risks, hazards, young people are affected. And so it's very critical that young people take a center stage in South Africa's response to this triple planetary crisis. So you might ask, what is the triple planetary crisis? When we refer to the triple planetary crisis, we're talking about climate change, loss of biodiversity or nature, and pollution or waste. Now, today, this webinar seeks to showcase real life solutions
Excuse me. You are muted, Lusanda. Lusanda, you are muted. Yeah, please go ahead now.
Oh, wow. Have I been muted the whole entire time?
No, initially you were okay. Now you were muted. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So please let me know which part did I get muted? So I know where to kickstart
No,
from.
you were going to just explaining what the three planetary crises are about. You know, we're discussing that. Over to you, Ms. Lusanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure it was in between changing the documents that I got muted. Thank you so much for letting me know. So yes, so if we can then kickstart from, as I was basically reviewing what we mean by the triple planetary crisis. And so with that said, we are talking about climate change, loss of biodiversity or nature, and pollution or waste. And with us today, we have a panel of young people who are representing these three areas. Now, before we kickstart, I want to hear from you. Where are you joining us from? From a range of 1 to 10, let me know, how are you feeling? 10 being super wonderful, super excited. 1 being you're getting there, you're not quite feeling well. So I'd love to see your comments on the chat function, if you can put that there. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to be reading and introducing to you who our panelists are today. As I pull that up, if you can just give me a moment, I'm going to be pulling that information shortly. While that document is loading, I'm not seeing you right on your chat function. Just to give me a heads up, where you're joining us from. There's over 50 of us joining this webinar, which is absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to see that. Where are you joining us from and how are you feeling? So first of all, we have Ms. Ntabiseng Mabetlela. She's a youth climate activist and is currently studying at a degree in computer science at the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. So I'm just going to do one-liners just out of interest of time, just for you to be aware of who who is joining us today. Secondly, we have Ms. Tenele Ndlovu, who's a junior advisor and a gender focal point in the climate justice at GIZ, and who previously worked as an intern with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment. We're also joined by Mr. Marlborough Rousseau, who has been the Conservation South Africa CSA with Conservation South Africa for the past 5 years and is currently the Senior Coordinator of Climate Change and Communications. We also have with us Princess Gedumile Kaliphile Mabena. She's a cultural environmental friend to the cause. And we also are joined by Mr. Gift Lubebe, a former research engineer at one of the leading telecommunications companies in South Africa, Dimensions Data. And finally, but certainly not least, thank you, Mr. Cliff Chivanga, who is a development practitioner with a demonstrated history of working in the projects management area. He's skilled in nonprofit organizations, research, fundraising, strategic planning, and grant writing. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining. And before you introduce yourselves, thank you so much. I'm seeing Damaris is joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Absolutely love Kenya. Hi, everyone joining from UNICEF South Africa. Thank you. Thank you. Seeing George in the George Garden Route of South Africa. Everyone who has been through the Garden Route, you are blessed. You know how absolutely beautiful that route is. So awesome. So as we go around, I'm just going to read your comments. Thank you so much for just greeting us. So without further ado, let us kick us off with our first panelist. And our first panelist is Ms. Thabiseng Mabetlela, and Denele Ndlovu, and they represent the climate action component. And so, ladies, please introduce yourselves. And I'm going to start with you, Ntabi Singh, and you can definitely start with your presentation. You both have 15 minutes. You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Ntabi Singh. Am I audible?
Very faintly, hey Tabi Singh, but we can hear you. But if we can improve, it would be fantastic.
Okay, I will just connect through my phone. But in the meantime, I think the other speaker can go ahead.
All right, thank you for that. And the other speaker is Miss Denele Ndlovu. Please introduce yourself and I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Lucinda. I'll just open my camera to introduce myself and then I'll turn it off. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denele Ndlovu. I am a junior advisor with the Climate Cluster in GIZ. The Climate Cluster, what we're focusing on is policy development and implementation, dealing with mainly government ministries. So we have the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. We also have programs where we deal with the DMRE, the presidency, and so on. So I'll just turn off my camera and then start with my presentation. Sorry, Lucinda, is it 15 minutes or 7 minutes?
Both of you have 15 minutes.
All right, thank you so much. So what I will touch base on is what are the gaps and challenges of climate change? What is the way forward, the opportunities? I'll also touch on how we as the youth can drive this. How can the youth get involved in driving a climate action? Also, how do we empower the youth to have the right capacities and the bottlenecks that are involved in that? And I will also touch on briefly on the work that we're currently doing on climate action. So with the challenges, what are the gaps and challenges? South Africa is amongst the world's 20 largest greenhouse gas emitters. This is due to heavy reliance on coal, as we know, in the power and industry sectors. Currently, we're dealing with load shedding because of this. So we are one of the 20 largest greenhouse gas emitters, which leads to climate change and the extreme weather events that we are going through as a country. Young and indigenous people often lack a deep understanding of this climate change knowledge. And we also have young people in South Africa that are not involved in policy and decision-making spaces. This is the problem that we deal with on every year. We try to address how the youth and indigenous people can be involved in policy development, decision-making, and implementation. As we know that a lot of young people are sitting on a lot of information, but then they are not exposed to the spaces. We also have youth tokenism, which is also a problem where youth are only invited to speak on climate change issues only during the youth month, but throughout the year, they are not part of those deliberations. And then on the work that we're doing as the climate support program, we have policy development, which supports the development and implementation of ambitious climate action in the areas of mitigation, adaptation, and transparency. We also have an inclusion of biodiversity. On policy implementation, we are trying to strengthen the means of implementation of climate change, biodiversity policies, and responses. This will be done at national, subnational, and private sector levels. We also have the third output, which is the EKI interface function, where we are strengthening dialogue on climate and biodiversity among EKI projects as well as stakeholders in South Africa. We are also fostering a collaboration to contribute to policy advancement and create an enabling environment for implementation. Coming to how the youth can drive this, the role of the youth in climate action, how do we empower the youth to have the right capacities and the bottlenecks thereof? The first thing, the youth want to get involved in decision making and implementation. What the climate support program will be doing is increasing the youth and educator understanding of in the decision-making processes. We will also be supporting the SAIA. We are planning to support the SAIA, host youth-focused negotiation training to build the next generation of South African climate negotiators. We will be also supporting youth at SAIA develop a youth-friendly and accessible framework for assessing, measuring, and working towards implementation of the NDC and climate-related policies. We will be also supporting them on capacity building sessions, on policy participation, which will be targeted directly at the youth. Then on technology, the problem that we have currently as a country is that we don't have the right technologies to move into just transition. As we know that developing the right technologies to drive the climate agenda will need us to leapfrog, as we are not where we're supposed to be as yet, but we are planning to be there by 2030, which is going to be a problem. But then now what can work for us is leapfrogging towards development. We're also needing the youth to run at the forefront of this with developing the right technologies that can help us move towards that. We also have an issue with unemployment in South Africa. So what here can be done is getting the youth also at the forefront of maybe starting businesses with the right technologies and getting the financial support for youth-owned companies that will be driving climate change implementation, because as we know, not a lot of companies are hiring at the moment. So starting our own companies will help with implementation of the climate actions and the strategies that we have. My presentation ends here. No, Miss Lusanda, do I still have time?
Well done. Thank you so much. I could see you were racing over there, but thank you so much for sticking to time. Actually, you were correct. I was saying 50 minutes in total, but broken down, each person has 7 minutes. So I just want to check in with our first panelist. If you've been able to sort out your being able to join us with better audio now.
Hi, Lusanda, can you hear me now?
Excellent, my darling. Thank you so much. Your 7 minutes starts now.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Honestly, I'm gonna give it up to Danella. She did such a great job in describing what young people can do. And I am myself a young person, a young climate activist, and in my capacity, I've been able to advocate for changes in our community, and working with policy and recommending policy changes to what government is doing right now. As a member of I'm a member of the Youth Policy Committee at Youth at SAIA, and last year we launched the very first South African Youth Climate Action Plan, which is basically a very important document on how young people are very important to the movements and how young people can create change, not only in the community, but country at large. We recognize that, climate change is a very serious matter, and not a lot of young people it's either they're not aware of it or they can't see it in their daily lives. And I think what's important right now, like if I say a lot of things today, what's important right now is to remember that climate change is not just an environmental issue, but it intersects with so many issues. And in South Africa, we have problems surrounding youth unemployment and electricity. Just right now, Eskom announced that we're going to move to stage 6, I believe. So you can see that a lot of problems in our country are intersectional, and with climate change we can now solve our triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality while saving our planet. And I think that's just like a very beautiful thing. So just going back to the South African Youth Climate Action Plan, the document has 5 pillars, namely intersectionality, advocacy and activism for climate action, good governance, systematic change, and environmental sustainability. Because today we're going to be talking a lot about climate action, let's just move on to the second pillar, which is advocacy and activism for climate action. As young people, I think the most beneficial thing that we can do is educate one another on climate change and to capacitate one another and to help build a network. Young people are definitely the implementers of change, You know, we at Youth Asaya, we do a lot of policy recommendations and engage with a lot of stakeholders and let our voices be heard. Because what we've seen so far is a lot of youth tokenism, you know, just having young people remembered on Youth Day, as it was mentioned earlier, and not really have meaningful representation. And, you know, I encourage all of you to start acting, you know, with purpose and start having your voices heard, to not only just sit at the table, but to also shake the table. And, you know, at Youth Asaya, we encourage youth participation and decision making at all levels. Like, that's something that we always push for. And, you know, it's very important for us to empower and capacitate youth activists with skills and resources to engage with their communities on climate change and the socioeconomic issues that intersect with it. We strongly support training and workshops that improve digital literacy and reduce the digital divide in vulnerable and low-income communities. What we've seen with the COVID-19 pandemic is how everything shifted online, and there were so many people who were left behind. So, as mentioned earlier, that's when, you know, we start talking about innovation. How do we now make sure that every young person is included in this? Because as a young person, when you start learning about climate change, maybe you are in a space where you could just hop onto Google and search about it and, you know, educate yourself. But other people don't have that chance, they don't have that opportunity. And I think that's when we start pushing for changes, like pushing for changes with government and with you know, a lot of people in policy spaces. We start pushing for having either zero rated sites, or for, you know, lowering the data rates. So we have a very high data rate, and so internet is not accessible by a lot of people. So addressing the digital divide is very important. And when we talk about increasing climate literacy, right, so when we educate one another about it, we need to make sure that the content, there's no barrier to it. You find that a lot of information is in English, it's online, and there's so much jargon. So we just need to remove that barrier. And I think if you're in a space where you are able to either translate the information or put it in a way that is easily understood by someone who doesn't have a high level you know, education level, or anyone, honestly, or even a child, you know, if you can explain what climate change is and how serious it is to what, a 12-year-old, you're doing a great job. So I think in our space right now, as activists, it's very important for us. Like, the thing that we can do immediately is to raise awareness about climate action, is to participate in spaces like the Youth Policy Committee at SAIA, you know, that helps young people engage with a lot of policy recommendations and to have their voices heard. So yeah, I think I'm just going to end it there. I could literally talk for days on this, but just a summary of it: raising awareness, removing barriers, digital barriers, language barriers, and making sure that everything comes down to a lower level so that we include everyone. And I strongly encourage all of you to do that. Have your voices heard. Don't just be, you know, a youth token. And I think we can do a lot of work, and have a lot of social impact and meaningful impact. Thank you very much.
Absolutely beautiful. And Tabi saying, thank you so much for speaking, both of you, with such conviction and passion, driving that point home that you've seen a lot of youth tokenism. And I'm just going to invite everyone, we're going to go through the panelists, and then at the end, we're going to have a session of discussion, questions and answers. So be like me as they're speaking, so you don't forget anyone, so that, because each person is just raising so many great points, please do jot down. You can jot down the questions actually even now on the chat function, and then we'll go over them. Just before we kick off to the next segment, Siabona, I just want to see, I see you from Sanbi. I want to read Lerato's comment. She says, from Hammanskraal, so grateful for this opportunity, and I definitely echo your sentiments. And so right about now, representing the nature action of the triple threat is panelist Mr. Rousseau, who's a senior coordinator, climate and communications in Conservation South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Your 7 minutes starts now.
Thank you, and good day, everyone. Yes, so I'm Malherbe Rousseau with Conservation South Africa and working in Springbok in the Namaqualand area. So I will be taking you through the work we are doing with the youth here. But before we get there, I just want to take a step back and explain why we're working in Namaqualand. So we've done a vulnerability assessment that looked at 4 key assessments: the ecological infrastructure, priorities for supporting livelihoods, areas supporting climate change resilience, and systematically identified a set of biodiversity priorities. So by combining these 4 key assessments, we came up with the areas that are most vulnerable to climate change and where our work is needed. So our rangeland restoration, one way that we do this with is working with local farmers that make use of the commonage areas for grazing. So we sign them up in a conservation agreement where they then implement a set of conservation actions, and for that they receive benefits that they can use for the conservation actions. So that would be something like livestock medicine or more climate resilient breeds. So through these conservation actions, it provides benefits to the farmers themselves, and in return, the rangelands are experiencing less pressure from grazing. So these conservation actions allows farmers to adapt to climate change through their farming practices. Our other program that we run is the Yes for Youth, which is a national government program. So through the Yes for Youth, we provide eligible youth with a 1-year working experience. And this is to build up their CVs with experience and trainings that they get throughout the year. And this then in turn assists them to find a more permanent job afterwards, and making them job ready when they go out. So the youth engage then with us in a variety of environmental work and receive training. Now, some of the work that they do is restoration on soil. So they implement a low-cost, low-technology soil erosion control for us. Those that might know it, we talk about gabions, where it's rock backs and microcatchments. So these interventions, they slow down the water to capture sediment and provide an ideal environment for vegetation to regrowth in the area. Now, the youth also links in with the stewardship farmers by providing support to them in livestock handling and dosing as needed by the farmers. And they also help to clean and move the livestock pens to new locations. This enables the farmers then to implement rotational grazing. The youth also assist us with monitoring the grazing areas that are feedback into a bigger picture of better management of the areas. So through all of this, we have identified some points that we feel is still needed to take the youth to the next level when it comes to the environment. So some challenges that we are experiencing is new participants every year. So the youth can only work for 12 months in the program, and then they need to leave. And this means that every 12 months is new training that needs to happen. The program is also not focused on dedicated funding for restoration material that can be used for a bigger impact. We also see that in the light of employment by the youth, as that farmer organizations can take them further with employment, but there's a lack of funding for cooperations to access, which means they cannot employ the youth afterwards. We think there is also a gap that needs addressing to ensure that the youth that have received this training and that knows about restoration work to take that further. We also feel that in the area there's a need for the development of pro-nature enterprises. that is managed by the youth that comes out of this program. So looking at all of the vegetation that can be used, like medicinal plants, and finding a supply chain for that. And then the increasing the awareness and understanding of the impact that the youth are having on the environment. So getting them to stay longer in positions like this, as change is happening slowly in the Namaqualand. So to keep them motivated for work in environment, we feel that they will have better motivation when they can start to see the impact that their work is having. And that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rousseau. For someone who's involved in farming, I absolutely love the work that you're doing. Thank you so much, sir. And
excuse me, Madam Chair. Excuse me, Madam Chair. Could you please ask the panelists to really put on their videos when they communicate? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. So panelists, we would love to see your wonderful faces. Please put on your video when you do present, and then you can certainly switch it off afterwards. So our second panelist is Her Royal Highness Princess Mabena. Thank you so much, ma'am. Your 7 minutes starts now. If you can please turn on your video.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can hear
Okay.
you, but we can't
Yes,
see
I
you
would
just
actually.
yet.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. So if you can just lower your screen a bit, because we can just only see your eyes and your beautiful headgear.
Okay, well, if they don't mind, can I just turn off my video because I don't want to disturb the network connection. I'm currently going through load shedding.
Got you. Totally understood. We've seen you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for making time to attend the Youth Environment webinar. Special thank you to Ms. Mahamase for inviting me to take part in this event. To Grace Moore and everyone who helped organize this, I say thank you. I am Princess Kitumile Mabena from the Ndebele Kingdom. I am under the office of His Highness King Makosonke II of Amandebele under the Ndebele Kingdom Youth Committee. I am very much honored to be part of this event yet again. Being part of this event has given me great insight and valuable knowledge that I can take back and implement in the region. Our work is primarily focused in active participation of the community in agriculture and nature conversation. Last time we spoke, we as the kingdom needed to do a lot more work in terms of learning and preparing ourselves for climate change. My belief is to make nature work for you without destroying the environmental habitat. The government has leased about 400 farms around KwaNdebele. Most of those farms are not active due to lack of funding and severe water shortages. The Office of the King has set up a secondary cooperative, Sisonke Balimi, which has 100 member farmers who are farmers. The main focus of the cooperative is to help farmers with funding, support, and resources. We have since seen an increase in youth participation in the agricultural space. We hope to set up agricultural learnerships before the year ends, but with all the farmers coming together through Sisonke Balimi, that should help the process. As I have said before, we mainly rely on the private sector that has been a great supporter in helping us face some of the challenges. The relationship of the kingdom and its king and the Patros Motsepe Foundation has been fruitful. And because of that, we have been able to provide 16 boreholes to schools around the region. That should help alleviate the water crisis that has plagued us. It is the small things in climate change that can cause devastating effects. We aim to create a self-reliant society within the next 10 years. Our future plans include introducing tunnel farming for vegetation, feedlot, and a nature reserve privately owned by the kingdom. There are currently 3 nature reserves that are run by government, but due to lack of resource and support, they do not sustain the community or promote active participation from community members. We admit that we need to cultivate a more robust partnership with government to ensure community participation and education on nature conservation in order to turn those nature reserves into a success and an active learning ground. Going forward, there needs to be a better relationship with key stakeholders like organizations, community members, government, and traditional leaders. And that's all I have to say. I hope that I spoke well. Thank you so much.
You certainly did. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the boreholes that you have installed. Fantastic. It's so wonderful to see that part of our audience are people from the Eastern Cape as well. It's absolutely fantastic from Matatiele. I'm seeing you, Sikilelo, from Bizani. You are most welcome. Thank you so much. So right about now, we have our final set of panelists who are representing the pollution or waste action. We're going to be starting with Mr. Gift Lubele, circular economy entrepreneur and the co-founder of Kudoti. I hope I've pronounced it. I honestly pronounce it the closer version, but you can definitely correct me. So thank you so much, Gift. Your 7 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much, Sanda. And that is correct. It's Kudoti. I have met a lot of people who pronounce it quite weirdly, but you did a good job. So thank you for having me. Really excited. I'm also experiencing load shedding, so I'm just gonna keep my face here for a minute, and then I'm gonna switch it off. I'm happy to send anyone a selfie if you need to see my face anytime. I know I'm just joking, but I'm Gift from Kudoti, and I think we all know that global brands face major challenges and pressure, both from a regulation point of view and a consumer action point of view. And to show how their products are being recycled, a lot of brands that we have started engaging with and governments are struggling to keep up with this exponential growing amount of waste that is being generated. And it is extremely difficult for the government as well as brands to manage the issue of waste and recycling without really investing and introducing new solutions. So what we do at Kudoti is we are essentially a platform that helps brand and government keep track of all their waste materials. Because the biggest challenge that waste and pollution really faces is a lack of data. And I know this for a fact because I have engaged with many governments, not only in South Africa, but throughout the African continent. And all of them seem to be failing to answer a simple question that I normally ask them, which is, do you know how much waste you produce and where it goes? A lot of these different stakeholders, be it governments or brands, they do not know how to answer this question because there is no data within the waste industry. So through our platform, we essentially help them track, verify, and essentially manage this. And we have so far, through our platform, managed to trace, recycle more than 8 million kilograms of waste materials. We are present in 5 African countries and in South America, in Colombia. For me, I'm really excited to share with you some of the findings that I've saw over the years being in this waste and pollution industry, and essentially suggest recommendations that we could implement to really help young people come forth, particularly in fighting waste and pollution. The first challenges I briefly mentioned is a lack of data. Every single person that speaks about waste, you ask them where they get the waste data or the waste figures that they are highlighting, you actually find that the source is very unreliable, or the figures that they are sharing with you is in fact inconsistent with other figures. So lack of data is a huge problem. If we want to solve the issue of waste and pollution, we need to start generating an understanding where our waste goes, who treats it, and then be able to divert it from landfill. Secondly, is there's a huge inadequate waste management facility. Looking at South Africa, you would see that the growing population that is happening now is certainly giving more strain to the limited waste management facilities that we have. If you look at the waste management process and maybe specifically look at plastic, there's about 7 steps that a plastic waste material will go through for it to reach its maximum value. And that is collecting it, washing it, sorting it, baling it, even pelletizing it. And a lot of these stages require infrastructure, and we don't have such infrastructure in South Africa. The third thing that I realized that is a major challenge, particularly for young people wanting to be a part of waste recycling and pollution combating, is this unfair and inconsistent price that we then get from the buyers of waste materials. If you look at South Africa, only a handful of waste management companies actually control the whole industry. They're the ones that set the price. They're the ones that essentially have the demand and the supply. And so really no one can really touch them. And this is becoming extremely difficult for any young person in South Africa who wants to be a part of this waste recycling industry. And the fourth challenge really is our very limited view of what waste treatment is. Every single person that I engage with, or maybe let me not say every single person, rather a lot of the people I engage with, as soon as I speak about waste, what they think about is recycling. And recycling is really one part of how we can treat waste. I mean, there's amazing opportunities and solutions that we could start implementing and investing in South Africa, such as waste to energy. I mean, right now, the reason I'm not switching on my video is because we're experiencing load shedding. One of the speakers earlier spoke about South Africa potentially facing stage 6 of load shedding. Yet South Africa is one of the biggest countries that contributes to waste. And this waste, in fact, can be converted into energy. And for me, what really excites me is, though, the different opportunities that exist for the youth in South Africa. So many young people can with this industry, but they come. I've just really highlighted 3 key challenges that I've saw that a lot of these the youth in South Africa face. The first one is access to finance. And as cliche as this might sound, a lot of young people in South Africa do not have 2 cents to rub together to start doing anything. So I am pleading to all the stakeholders here that if you are able in your capacity to advocate from the government to the government or to the private sector to enable opportunities for young South Africans to access finance so they can start doing something, that would be absolutely amazing. The second part is there's a huge element in South Africa that still needs research and development. There's minimal innovation in this space. I was quite fortunate to be at the Dubai Expo in the last week, and the things that they are doing with waste are literally mind-blowing. It's amazing things, and it's because they've put in amazing, or rather significant amount of investment in growing the innovation that might be in existence within a country. And I have no doubt that in South Africa, there's amazing innovation that exists within the youth. We all know that South Africa is one of the leading countries when it comes to youth unemployment, with more than 63% of young people who are currently unemployed between the ages of 15 and 24, and 42.1% for those aged 25 to 34 years old. These, for me, are amazing networks of talent, networks of entrepreneurs that we can tap into and essentially enable innovation that combats recycling. My last point is the 3 recommendations that I have. And the first one is this: waste collection and recycling should be made an official employment. In South Africa, there's about Well, the sources that I've seen says 100 to 250 informal waste pickers who are making a living out of collecting waste materials. For a second, I want you to imagine what this would mean from an economic point of view if these 100 to 250 individuals were made official, were made official employment. This would mean amazing things. If you go to a lot of townships in South Africa, you go to a lot of villages in South Africa, waste exists. Why is it that we can't make this an official employment where there is some system that essentially enables someone to register with very basic minimum training? They then are able to be awarded a certificate of employment for them to start picking up waste, and that waste is being tracked and essentially used for other things. That's my first recommendation. We need to start officializing the issue of, or rather the activity of collecting waste. Secondly, the South African government really needs to start reducing red tape that exists for entrepreneurs that are fighting climate-related issues. Any entrepreneur that is fighting climate, that is doing good things for nature, and is having any solution that is waste-related, they need to somewhat be incentivized. And today, this does not exist. If you are an entrepreneur in South Africa and you are having a business, whether it's doing good or for the environment, it almost doesn't matter. You still face the very same challenges that a normal industry entrepreneur would face. I myself face these challenges, and it's very small things, like when you apply for grant funding, they ask you for things like 3 years audited financial statements. I mean, how many entrepreneurs in South Africa have 3 years audited financial statements? So by just putting something like that or a requirement like that, you have a huge, or you have the amount of entrepreneurs that actually deserve to get that opportunity. My last recommendation is, and I'm so happy that there's a lot of advocacy and actors who are promoting the goodness of, or the benefits rather, of a climate fighting country. We need more awareness and more educational campaigns in South Africa. These need to be prioritized. I say this because when I speak about climate, people look at me like I'm one of those tree huggers, people who are living in their own world. They haven't yet understood the importance and the real life effects of climate change. I'll give you a quick example and then I'll close. Recently, we had Durban floods. I was attending one of the seminars, and an expert in the industry was demonstrating that part of the contribution for the Durban floods is the plastic that filled the pipes, the water storage pipes in Durban. Durban has, just like Joburg, water holes or boreholes that are meant to handle vast amounts of water. So if those pipes are locked, the water just builds up and it then creates floods. These are very early signs of climate change. And so when we speak about challenges or rather solutions fighting climate change, solution that encourage and grow nature, solution that speaks and fight waste and pollution, it is important that we raise awareness and we educate our communities on the importance and the relevance of these challenges in our normal day lives. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic, Lubele. Those recommendations were actionable, on the point, and really, really relevant. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Mr. Chivanga, you are taking us home, sir. He's from Southern African Youth Movement. Your 7 minutes starts now. Thank you so much.
The camera can be found. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, sir. Please switch on your camera if you can.
I think you should do it from that end because it seems it's disabled from this end.
Wow.
He's telling me no camera available.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
But again,
it's okay.
It goes.
Thanks.
All right. I think as long as we can hear you, so you can go right on ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And good day, everyone. My name is Cliff Chivanga, and I'm representing the Southern African Youth Movement. Let me just put a disclaimer a bit. I have a bit of sound that will be coming from my background. I'm attending a workshop for Green Solutions somewhere. So I'm actually doing this presentation from the hotel lobby. So indulge me if you get any feedback from the background. Thank you for that. Then I think the introduction has been done already. I'll go straight into my presentation that I prepared today for this conversation. I think it's very important for us to highlight of course, the challenges that we are faced with in terms of waste pollution. They cannot be overemphasized. But let me start from that point where I highlight, starting on that somber note, where I highlight the challenges that we are faced with in terms of the waste challenge in South Africa. It is given that we have a challenge of landfill space in South Africa, because over the 900 landfills that are across South Africa, 90% of them, they are running out of space. And this is a big challenge that is actually going to be faced with a lot of local municipalities, because the landfill space that we have is running out. And the second aspect that I wanted to also put across is the issue of the per capita generation of waste in South Africa. The research that has been done and research papers that are available, they indicate that the average South African generates an average of above, half a kg a day in terms of the waste that they generate every day, which gives us over 25 million to 30 million kgs of waste that are generated every day. And out of this waste that is being generated across South Africa on a daily basis, we are told that only around between 10% to 20% of the waste is being recycled, with plastic waste ranking the highest in terms of waste that is being put to good use or that is being recycled. And I must highlight that there is some good work that has been done, because South Africa is ranked the highest ahead of Europe in terms of waste, plastic waste recycling, because we have recycled between 30 to 40% according to Plastic South Africa. But I think there is a distortion to that figure, because there is quite a number of disparities in terms of reports of where the waste is originating from, because South Africa is also importing waste from the region that is also going through the process of recycling. And therefore, that figure cannot speak only to the waste that is being recovered at source, recovered in South Africa. So at the organization, I've spoken about the challenges that are faced with the local municipalities within South Africa and communities in South Africa. What is the solution? As Southern Africa Youth Movement, we developed a model for zero waste to landfills, which we were implementing in 5 provinces. We selected municipalities that we're working with. But the highlight of the project has been implemented in the Free State. And I think there's quite significant work that is being done in terms of trying to pilot a source separation model where all the useful materials, which are estimated to be 65% of what is generated at household level, for them to be diverted at the point of generation. And this will save the local municipalities a lot of money in terms of the costs that the resources that they are putting towards transportation and collection of waste, because the highest cost of waste management actually lies within the cost of transportation, which is about 70%. And therefore, if we can provide this intervention and scale up similar interventions to ensure that 65% of waste generated at household level is diverted at point of generation, will therefore be left with only 35%, which is the waste that will be going to the landfills, and thereby reducing the burden on the environment in terms of creating new landfills. And by the way, it will take us over 10 years, for us to actually establish new landfills that will be, compliant to the standards of engineered landfills in South Africa. So as an organization, we piloted this project of source separation, where we had quite a number of young people who are participating. For example, in Free State alone, we had over 1,000 young people who were working on collection of recyclable materials at household level. And what we did is that we assigned young people to go and do source separation training. We identified 50 households to form a workspace for one young person. And then after the training, they started implementing the collection of the waste. And we received quite significant results in terms of the materials that were recovered and the impact that that project has in terms of diverting the landfill-bound materials that have got potential to actually produce greenhouse gas emissions. And in that regard, we also piloted a project that is looking at diverting organic waste that is produced at household level to ensure that we eliminate this waste stream from going to the landfills, because it is one of the materials that generates the most in terms of greenhouse gas contributions, which is the methane that is produced at the landfills that we have across South Africa. And then I think we really need to also speak to the issue of policies. The policy environment, from the experience of the work that we have been doing, I would speak mainly on the issue of the revised nationally determined contributions, which is a process that we also participated as an organization. We made input to that process, but also I think the waste sector is one of the sectors that are highlighted in terms of the commitments of reducing the waste-related greenhouse gas contributions. And I think if we structure our programs in the manner that I highlighted earlier, we should be able to make a significant contribution in terms of reductions. And I think we also look at the integrated solid waste management plans that are available within every local municipality. We have provincial integrated solid waste management plans from the national, provincial, and then the local level. But I think we really need to look at opportunities for developing programs that are going to be looking at the district development model. I think the district development model is the model that the government is actually pushing towards, because it then allows implementing partners to actually concentrate resources from a district level, and then target the municipalities that are within that district for them to actually fully participate, and for us to be able to report to the district in terms of the impact that the projects are making. So I think in terms of the policy environment, there are quite a number of opportunities, and the policy environment actually allows the participation of non-profit organizations in that space. As you are aware that there are quite a number of call for proposals and tenders that are released even by the Department of Environmental Affairs that looks at appointing entities or project managers who are going to be working with young people in terms of waste management. Now, in terms of galvanizing the support for meaningful youth participation in climate action, especially in the waste sector, I think there's an opportunity for us to make sure that we push waste beneficiation at local level. What that does is that we create a lot of green jobs at the local level, because we do not want to have a scenario where the local people, they are restricted to be just the transporters of waste, the means of waste to move from the point of generation to the point where it's going to be processed. We want a value, addition of waste beneficiation to happen at the local level, where we are going to see the people who are doing the most important work, which is the waste pickers, to be able to access meaningful or gainful income from the activities that they will be doing. Because if you look at the disparity that is there, downstream recycling does not pay. but upstream recycling is paying a lot. South Africa is estimated to be a 24 billion rand recycling industry. Yet the people who are at the peripheral, people who are doing the most important work, who are the waste pickers, they are just, just getting the breadcrumbs of what the recycler is getting. So I think there's need for that balance to be put in place. And this is what we have tried to do as an organization, because we have a program that we are working with the fast-moving consumer goods companies to establish a waste processing facility where we are going to ensure that there will be a percentage of the profits that are going to be generated that will be channeled back to the communities that are recovering these materials, because I think that's what we need if we are to have meaningful sustainability. Because for us, we say let's view sustainability with its three legs. We have to make sure that the environmental sustainability is achieved, not at the expense of the social sustainability, not at the expense of profit. So those three, which is environmental sustainability, social sustainability, as well as the economic sustainability, there has to be a balance to ensure that even the people who are participating in the processes, they are not marginalized. And then that then leads me to the next project that where the intervention that we also looked at. Because if you look at the space of recycling in South Africa, the people who are contributing 90% of the materials that are going for recycling are the waste pickers. But those waste pickers, majority of them, you realize most of them, they actually, they don't even have access to basic human rights. The conditions of their work, they are very bad. Some of them, they actually sleep on the streets. Some of them, they indulge or they end up using substances because of the conditions of work. And therefore, we also looked at a program where we say, what infrastructure do we need to put in place to ensure that we actually make the working conditions of the waste pickers much better? And then after doing that, we then take some of the waste pickers into a rehabilitation process. And this, we are going to channel it to our program that we have, because we actually have a rehabilitation facility which has got both a treating center as well as the outpatient and inpatient rehabilitation process. So I think this is some of the initiatives that we have been doing as an organization. Now, for the purpose of time, let me go into the call to action. I think it's very important for us to make sure that we also push for the alignment of priorities, especially when it comes to the local municipalities. The alignment of their priorities. We look at, we must borrow lessons from COVID-19 pandemic. The measures that were put by the government in terms of the responding to the COVID pandemic, they actually brought all the stakeholders on the table. And then there was coordination and unity of purpose in terms of ensuring that people were able to actually come out of the pandemic. And now I think in terms of the climate change, if we are not going to push climate change to that extent where we realize that this is a real emergence of our lifetime, we need to put our heads together and coordinate our efforts and then prioritize policies for government to ensure that there will be local level impacts that will then build into national and global impact. I think that's the call to action for me. And I think we really need to support the community-based organizations, the grassroots organizations that are working on local level impact. People who are able to make the little impact that then builds into those national and global targets in terms of climate action. So I think in terms of for this session, let me end here, and then maybe I'll take questions after the interventions from other panelists. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Chivanga. That was very comprehensive. Thank you and congratulations for the work that you're doing through your movement. So right about now, before we go into our Q&A session, I'd like to invite the team to play a video for us. And while the team is doing that, I'd like to invite you to please post your questions on the chat function so that after the video, I'm going to be reading them so that our panelists are able to respond to them. Thank you so much, team. I hand over to you.
I believe we should look for a call to action. And once we see the action, hope will inevitably come.
My life or our lives as human beings are 100% dependent on nature.
It's crazy how much it affects us, but how much people don't recognize it and realize what it actually is. Human beings are the biggest causes of climate change. But the good thing is there's a solution, and we are part of the solution. There are a number of solutions to climate change, and we don't need to research them. They're already there. A lot of people just think we need to plant trees, but it just doesn't end there. We need to focus on change of mindset, change of mentality. If we are to mitigate the effects of climate change, if we are to end global warming, then we must start young. We must focus on adding curricula that is going to benefit them and the environment.
If we work together as a common family, just one family, in combating and fighting against this climate change and putting in measures, then we're likely to protect our future.
Governments need to definitely increase trial allocations towards areas, sectors, ideals that are meant to tackle climate change.
We as young people should be included more and should be given a lot of chances to actually articulate our issues with regards to climate change.
We must make sure that everything we do is for climate equity and climate justice.
They need to be aware of all the affairs that are actually happening. So we need to create platforms for them so that they get to be exposed and also understand that they are also partners in driving sustainable development.
Because that's how we'll know we matter. My message to all the children, all the youth, all the adults, all the elderly, even the toddlers is you can be the change. You can be the change the world is looking for right now.
Because at the end of the day, we have a future to protect and we've got an environment to protect as well.
Climate change is an issue. In fact, it's a defining issue. And we're living at a defining moment. And we are the ones who will define how we created this revolution and how we put an end to climate change. My name is Yande Banda and I'm 15 years old.
You can be the change indeed. Thank you so much for that video. So I'm going to read our first question from Moline, and please do put in your questions on the chat function. We definitely want to walk away from this webinar with some cool call to actions for each and every one of us. So this is for any member of the panelists. Please, you're welcome to jump in and respond. So Moline asked, would the option of starting a youth environmentalist cooperative help in branding like-minded youth together and having a singular voice, sustaining itself through minimal contributions from members, state funding, and international donors, basically a one-stop shop across industry driven by the youth? So maybe I'll even pick on Mr. Chivanga, since you are part of Youth Movement, and any other panelist member is welcome to respond to Moline's question. Gift, do you want to give it a jab?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So the question is, maybe just can you come back?
With the option of starting.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just reading the question, but it seems like you're also reading it. Go ahead.
So you're saying that I wasn't reading it, but I think in response to the question, I do think that it is important that we think about joint actions. A cooperative that brings all the different stakeholders together definitely is something that I would truly encourage. What I can say though is it is always important to understand why other members should be a part of the cooperative. One thing I have seen is, we're all here speaking about different things. There's some panelists who are speaking about nature, some are speaking about waste, some are speaking about climate, and we really shouldn't get lost in these individualized focus uh, uh, sessions. I have seen that if you don't find a common theme or common purpose to bring all these different stakeholders together, it definitely does get confusing. And so I don't know if other panelists can jump in, but my contribution to the question would be, let us all find a single thing that is very practical, that will benefit all the different stakeholders that you would be wanting to bring together as a one-stop shop.
Thank you for that contribution. I saw Mr. Chivanga, your hand was up as well.
Okay, thank you very much. My contribution, I think my colleague has just touched on that aspects of what I wanted to submit. But I think also in terms of the question that was raised to say the options of what move, a vehicle or enterprise that can be registered. I think my take would be for the individual, if they want to, the person as an individual to register a company that would be working in the space of waste management or agriculture or anything to do with the climate action space. I think there's also an option for them to register as a non-profit company, which is something that is very innovative, because you are allowed to trade because it's a social enterprise. It's still able to provide ecological benefits, but at the same time, it's able to have what you call it, a sustainability, a sustainability, a profit, or a small margin of profit that goes to the sustainability of the enterprise. So I think just to add to the response that was made by the other colleague, that's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe I also saw Danela's hand up.
Yes, it was up.
Fantastic. Please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to respond to Malan's question also based on would the option of starting a youth environmental help in branding like-minded youth together and having a single voice? I think that would be a great idea, because we've been preaching working in silos, how we can work together, combat the triple crisis. So now, if we have actually a company that is being funded by the state, by international donors and other community members or community organizations, I think it would push the state now to work together, to have meetings together, biodiversity, climate change, waste, coming together and finding solutions instead of us working in silos while at the same time working on the same thing. So maybe a company like this or a youth-led campaign on something like this would really help. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I would just also like to ask a question around youth tokenism. Anyone from the panelists is welcome to respond in terms of what are some of the practical steps that we can take home for each and every one of us to really try and bring young people to the table when it comes to this triple threat beyond Youth Month. Anyone from the panelists is welcome to give it a jab. I'd love to hear from you, Mabena. I'd love to hear from you, Mr. Rousseau, once more, since all of you work with young people. Thank you, Mr. Mabena.
Okay, yes. I'm actually noticing a pattern. There seems to be an exclusion of information and knowledge, especially in rural areas where there's mostly youth. So I think that it's not really a question, but I would just like to know, like, where does one actually go to get like information in terms of new technologies, in terms of ways that rural communities can implement. So I just think there's a lack of information when it comes to that. There's a lack of information to the youth, especially around my area. So yes, if somebody can help me there, I'll be more than grateful.
Please apologize. I apologize for calling you Mr. Mabena, Her Royal Highness. I was just going through my notes quickly, so please receive that apology. Gift, are you going to be responding to Her Royal Highness's question or responding to my question? Either or, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I'll try and do both. The first part is around essentially enabling people within the rural areas to gain information. I myself come from a rural area. I was born in Limpopo, so I understand how difficult it is to access information. What I have seen work is the amount of smartphones that are existent in rural areas. And I think for me, that is a very strong, powerful tool that has been underutilized for a very long time. We have been, and by we, I'm referring to my organization, we've been trying to really do a lot of work in terms of promotion of such information that we're sharing here around climate change and so forth, specifically targeted at online users that are based in rural areas. It is important to acknowledge the infrastructure difficulties that exist in rural areas. I mean, a lot of the people in rural areas are having difficulties of data. They don't have, proper equipment like laptops. It's still seen as a fancy thing. And so, though technology does help, I think it can only go so far. Physical interaction go a long way in villages. So if there's anything that I could say to Her Royal Highness is we just need to start finding ways of getting information to the rural areas with a sort of physical touch to it. To your question, Chair, around how essentially we could essentially start engaging, I guess, with maybe let me just add this last point before I respond to your question, Chair. Rural areas currently are facing a lot of challenges when it comes as well to things like English. The whole conference here is based on English. Coming from a rural village, I know that a lot of the young people, some of them are intimidated by speaking English, right? So I think the reason I suggested physical intervention is also because we need to start translating some of these conversations that we are having to home languages of these different people in rural areas. If you go to Limpopo, a lot of people there speak Sepedi, and English is not their first language. If you go to other parts, you'd find different languages. In KZN, it's Zulu. And I think when you are in a panel like this, it's quite easy to forget that English in itself is a barrier to a lot of villages that exist within South Africa. And so we need to also start thinking about how do we translate this information that we currently have to someone who sits in a village and needs to relate to what we are referring to. So my memory might be failing me a little bit, but maybe if you rephrase your question, I can maybe give it a that.
Oh yeah, you definitely touched on what I asked for. And you remind me of a dear friend of mine called Tabiso. He works very much in rural communities, and he said to me this week, you need to put on more your rural hat. And he was speaking to exactly the sentiments you're talking about, which was, listen, when it comes to certain communities, digital is just not going to cut it. You need to go there physically. So thank you so much for those contributions. I'm going to allow one more question. I believe it was a Mary that I saw whose hand was up. And then also I have to give honor to Mr. Rousseau to also respond. So Mary, please to ask your question, and then afterwards we'll have Mr. Rousseau with your remarks.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed the session. My name is Mary James, and I'm Head of Communication for the Western Cape Department of Agriculture. It's just more towards what was asked by Her Royal Highness in terms of what really works for rural communities. And at the Department of Agriculture, what we've actually done is we've used radio very extensively in sharing climate change related topics. And we started this radio show called Die Kooksteg, and which it started on the 3rd of April, about a couple of years ago, and it's also scooped a number of awards because of the uniqueness of a radio talk that specifically touches on climate change and looks into agriculture specifically. So to answer her question, I think if you are looking to reach your audience specifically in the rural areas, radio really does remain one of those key vehicles. So for those that are interested, please do visit our website, and you would find some of those old radio talks available on our site, which is www.elsenburg.com. And I'll just put that on the chat as well if you're keen. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm so grateful someone from the ministries there, because our organizations are recipients of your programs. So this is absolutely fantastic. So Mr. Rousseau, please go ahead, sir.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add to what Mr. Giftaf said about the language barrier. We also found that a lot of our communities is Afrikaans, but not just to translate it materials to Afrikaans for them, but also to use materials that is not full of a jargon that they get lost in. So really to bring it down to a level that is easy to understand for them. And I think also in our area, farming is part of a tradition. This has been a livestock farming area for a very long time. Actually the first in South Africa. So talking to that tradition with them and linking that to climate change and the actions that are needed from them and what they can do, that's also a good point to start engaging with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we would not do justice in closing this session without giving our precious partners a minute or two to also reflect. So I'm going to be inviting Ben Albert Smith from UNICEF, if you'd like to say some remarks. Debucho Maleka from UNIDO, as well as Teddy Namadovu from OHCHR. When any one of you would like to do some concluding remarks, your time
Madam
is
Chair.
now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I think before we give the floor to our partners, UNEP would like really to thank all the partners, and also particularly the panelists also here before they leave. With your permission.
Go for it.
Thank you very much. First of all, I think we would really like to thank all partners who are here, UNICEF, UNIDO, and also the OHCHR, for joining forces with UNEP to really organize this excellent platform. But what made it very excellent is now to have such well-distinguished panelists and a vibrant moderator like Miss, I think, Lundas. Basically, today, for UNEP and the partners is really an eye-opener, particularly working and recognizing the role of youth, particularly in tackling climate change. Not only that, in bringing the sustainable socioeconomic development in the country and as a whole in our continent. I really, really thank these distinguished panelists in these different areas. Ms. Mabetela, Ms. Tenele, they were really telling us about the whole climate action. We can not only silos on silos working on adaptation, but let's put it together and bring the mitigation as climate action and give a possibility of investment opportunity for creating jobs. And particularly, they were really focusing and telling, let's not focus only at the national level, and let's not forget at provincial, municipality, and also at community level. Indeed, that is very, very crucial. And also when we hear from Mr. Rousseau and also Her Excellency Royal Highness, I think the Princess, indeed, particularly the conservation for South Africa and others, we are really knowing that we have, the youth are the ones leading to conserve our land, to conserve our environment, to conserve the biodiversity and all what we have in our planet and in this country. Indeed, the experience, what we have heard from Mr. Rousseau, particularly creating an enabling environment for building the capacity, developing the capacity and skill of youth, that is really crucial. For us, that is the kind of empowerment for youth that we need, the experience what we are sharing. You have heard from Mr. Gift and Cleve, Mr. Cleve, the dynamism of actually creating wells from waste in South Africa, how it creates jobs. We are really very, very much thankful. When we organized this platform, particularly the Youth Environmental Webinar, indeed, we were focusing on Youth Day or Youth Month for South Africa, but also the team that was really focusing on the sustainable development. But for us, we really want the youth to drive tackling the climate change, tackling the nature action, tackling the pollution action, and changing the waste into wells and bringing the wells also to use for a better future is very important. And the call for action was very, very much really encouraging. That was the main objective of having this webinar, because we wanted to create a platform and see and hear from these dynamics users and to tell us what do we do. Particularly, we wanted to see whether there is a youth responsive policies in various catalytic sectors, and energy, in agriculture, in health. Do we have a youth responsive policies? We have heard from many of them that the clear, coherent, institutional, and also harmonized policy is required. Dear partners from UNICEF, from UNIDO, from OHCHR, this is our role now after this to see and play, join our forces with government and all levels of communities and the youth association to work together. They have asked us, we need incentives for young entrepreneurs, particularly involved in climate action, nature action. Do we really have that? We have to see that. And also they just mentioned to us, do we have the capacity and skill to be able for youth to play as a practitioner, as an entrepreneur, as an ambassador, as an advocate, as a decision maker, and as a negotiator? We have African group negotiator for climate change. How many youths are sitting there? So we need to build a capacity and skill of African youth to go and sit. Third, do we have the right technology? We are in technology era. For our youth to become an innovator, to play on a digital technology, if we don't equip them, they will not be able to bring our future better planet and others. So that is one. The other, what was really touched by our panelists, is access to finance. How do we make them? This is one of the call for action. How do we create access to finance? Not only that, access to market. So these are a call for action for us to go with it. Probably now, after having our partners talking about their programs, we will, as a way forward, we need these panelists to be part of us as a member and go for it and try to work on call for action to empower our youth in South Africa and beyond. We can start from South Africa, we can go to the South Africa region, and we can go to the continent, how to empower them in various catalytic sectors. Thank you very much. And while I'm doing this, I really thank our vibrant moderator and those who recommended you, also all the panelists, my team here in UNEP. I really thank them all for the hard work and just making this vibrant webinar a success. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Your gratitudes are well received. Thank you so much. I am aware that we are 5 minutes behind schedule, so I'm going to give our partners a few seconds just to also reflect on today's webinar, and then we'll be closing today's session. Any one of you is welcome now to please share your closing remarks.
Okay, hello everyone. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, I was a little bit late, but I got on the web, the seminar while this gentleman Cliff Chivanga was speaking, and to be specific, we are looking at the triple planetary crisis. The youth cannot be left behind because time is running out. And I think now the youth should better use the power of the internet to start small groups within the ministries of social and culture ministry or department in their local, county or community level. And then they'll be able to form groups that can be able to intervene through the government system locally and international organizations to be able to put the agenda across on the delivery of SDGs, climate change, and while they are computing this, they will be able to learn more through the IoT or machine learning or coding of petitions. So since there is no much time, the earlier the better, and use the power of, let me mention what I know, like Google Workspaces. I think also Microsoft have an application like that or any other app. And then we see we can be able, in the next webinar, the third one, we might be relating much better with some actionable demonstration or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? One more person from the partners before we close our session?
Hi, Lusanda. This is Ben from UNICEF.
Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. We just wanted to say a big thank you for the leadership of UNEP and Meseret and the sister UN agencies for coordinating this really informative youth environment webinar. And we totally agree that it's so important to bring youth to the forefront of youth responsive policies, but also to empower young people to come up with ideas and to put them at the center of co-creating ideas related to climate change. My colleague is sitting here with me, and I was wondering if it's possible for her just to quickly summarize some of the really interesting work that we're doing with our partners, with UNEP, with others. If she can summarize that in a quick 30 seconds, would that be okay, Lusanda? I know we're very late at the end of the day.
Is it really going to be 30 seconds?
Maybe less than 1 minute, right?
I promise to keep it very brief. But hi, everyone. My name is Christina. I just wanted to discuss an innovative platform that we've been working on that's really exciting. It's called YOMA, the Youth Agency Marketplace. And it's growing a lot in South Africa right now, working with some of the partners here. We've onboarded about 5,000 active users, but it's really about empowering young people to get involved in climate action and providing them rewards for doing so, and also helping them access different learnings and things like that towards the green economy. So I just wanted to mention that. We're really excited to launch a few different initiatives that we're hoping to really engage young people in the country in. One of them is working on a citizen science water monitoring project for around 10,000 young people. And then we're also engaging with Invulesi on a just transition knowledge exchange and mini hackathon July 22nd through the 24th. And so I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. And then one other exciting thing, we've been working with UNDP to support an immersive virtual reality exhibit at the Sai Bono Center, really showcasing water monitoring and engaging young people as climate activists, which so many people talked about today, how important that was. So just wanted to mention that, and I'll put a link in the chat if anyone's interested. There's some really great initiatives that we could potentially work with some of you guys on. And yeah, thank you so much for all the insights today.
That was definitely worth being extra late for, Christina. So thank you so much. Please definitely put those links on the chat function. That'll be well appreciated. So friends, colleagues, partners, environmentalists, panelists, this rounds up our talk today. Thank you so much for allowing me to host you. So we're all welcome to unmute and give each and every one of you a warm round of applause. It sounds actually very cool virtually.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we need a photo, please. Could you please?
And then, thank you for reminding me, actually.
Yes,
we need a photo.
Yeah, we need a snapshot, please. Yeah, thank
if
you.
everyone can please put on your video for a few seconds. Owen, I see your beautiful forehead, but I need to see your eyes and the rest of your face.
Ryan, could you please take the snapshot? Thank you, Ryan.
So Christina and Brian, yay! There's Christina, Mr. Rousseau. Owen, if you can be still so that your face shows properly, that would be great. And then just lower your screen so we can see your whole face.
This way?
Yeah.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
So, well, you can lower it more.
You.
Yeah.
Just wait.
All right.
Still saving. Just hold on. Just a minute.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you
Okay.
manage?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you all.
you. Fantastic.
Thank
Have
you.
a beautiful rest of the evening, everybody.
You
Cheers.
too.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
the moderator. Thank you for the panelists, for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.